And I thought I'd do a little bit of updates. Obviously we have the tires on. Don't remember if I talked about that in a previous video. We thought that the 550, which is back there, we thought that they were dished differently. And we stuck a board across the face of the tire and measured it out, and they both measured out to 10 inches. So they're actually not dished any differently, so we thought we would just stick with the yellow rims. Plus these tires are in better shape. And moving on from there, we tried to run it on the I-beam stand, but it really started getting hopping, and we don't have any gusset supports on that I-beam stand, and I didn't want it to hop off and kill somebody. So we had to put our tires on. Bodine Electric is supposed to be here already, but you know how that goes. They are going to stick a probe on the main threshing cylinder bearing here and balance it instead of just static balancing it like they want you to do in the manual. And we've got our cab all together. I documented changing out the Cessna valve with the one we bought from Surplus Center. Surplus Center said there was only 6 left in stock when Charlie called them, so we bought all 6 just because we're hogs. And I got a new cab filter coming. Charlie had the wire mesh cab screen air inlet off because it was just coated in bean pummy, so we have it off and are going to wash it, put new bolts in so we can take it off if we need to. We're not going to tackle the air this year just because we're starting to run out of time. And it's already cool today, and you're not in them that long. Altogether, including the corn, we only have 49 acres to do. And with both machines going, we got the 300 head leveled yesterday. I took it out of level when we were doing the red harvest video, which is on my brother's YouTube channel. Got that all going again, got our header control working properly this time. Figured that out a little bit more. It's kind of a learning project, or every time that we do these, we always learn something new. Took the seat cushions out of the 550. Let me crawl up here. Took the seat cushions out of the 550. I'm not going to install the armrest. I remember taking that off of the 540 we had because it would always gouge you when you were least expecting it, trying to get out of the cab, or you were trying to look out back to make sure your butt wasn't plugged. So we're going to leave that off. It bolted right on. That was a little nicer seat, had a much higher backrest. Here's the old backrest. We cut some new carpet for the cab. It's laying up on top. I had some silicone drying, so I didn't want to throw it back in here. I'm going to have the original white rubber laid in, and then I'm going to lay the carpet over top of it. That kind of keeps you from getting a little bitty valley right here. Makes it a little nicer. You can kind of keep the dust broomed out. And gonna cut a little piece of carpet for the back here. There's the old seat. And just tried to do every little thing we could. Don't know how well you can see it, but before we installed this bolt, this was actually a screw. Drilled it out to 5/16 just so it would match all the rest of these bolt holes that were missing. All these new golden screws are brand new. Flat washer helps to spread your pull out, pull the sheet metal together better. And just put a little silicone under there. There you can barely see it. And it'll be covered up by carpet, but at any little crack you can seal on the old girl will just keep a hair more dust out. And even if I keep out 2 little flecks, I'll be singing the praises. So everything's kind of a mess right now, but that's kind of the breaks of the games when you're working fast. And removed the radio. On an old Massey like this, you're constantly listening and smelling to make sure bearings aren't locking up, your butt's not packed full. It has some warning alarms on it, but I was always taught as a young man that when you're working, you're not jamming out to tunes on the radio. So got rid of it. Got some blue tape on the hole over there and some silicone patching it. That way our cab stays watertight for when we're big time picking on our 9 acres of corn. And Tested everything, got to fill up our hydraulic fluid. Like I said, Bodine Electric is supposed to be coming, and they actually called me yesterday and said, hey, we finished up our job earlier, and so we're coming tomorrow, which is good. And the little things, don't know if I documented this, but Charlie would stand down in the front, and we would mark all of our different front concave settings, and that just makes it to where you can adjust it on the go. I don't know why they got away from this. In the 300, it has a nice aluminum plate that spans this, that starts at like a 1/16 of an inch and ends up at like 1.5 inches or whatever it goes to. But they were probably starting to get tighter on money and wanted to cheapen these machines up. That is a pretty old machine, so generally quality goes down over time, about with anything. I got to reinstall some of our shields. We have this shield, we like to run that way you don't get your finger chopped off. We got one belt guard to install in here for the unloading auger, and everything appears to be in order. Like I said, all the belts are new, and if you're still watching by this point, you must have some interest in old Massey's. So I think that'll cover the overview for today. As soon as Bodine gets our main thrashing cylinder balanced, we are going to reinstall our throat. Of course, the new chain, new slip clutch is there. We just like going through these old machines. I found these stickers, and I really like that critter. That's kind of how you look when you're done working on them. You get a crazed look in your eye, and so I put those on, got a rubber strap on our battery box. Still haven't heard any word on this rear concave for the straw chopper. Not a big deal, we never really run them anyway. And I put one of these stickers on the back, and it did match up pretty well on the color scheme. And I think that should do it for this video. Oh, and this is something we like to do. Some people might say, well, that makes the combine look ugly. But if you ever wash these constantly fill up with bean pumice. And here you can see we were starting to get some rust. And that just sets in there and continually eats. And if you ever got a sprinkle, well, then it's wet and it just sits in there and keeps eating your metal away from your hopper and your butt. So we fill them up with silicone. It's not noticeable from a distance. And then of course, once we wash this was blowed out real deep. And then of course it's set inside now for a month and a half. And so it'll be nice and dried out in there. Seal it up with silicone, and you never have to worry about it again. That was a weakness on these old machines. I believe that diesel back there, the 300, has some holes about 1/4 inch right back in here, but that's something we like to do all the way around the hopper. Just follow these little support pieces of metal that are spot welded on. That help to make your saddle tank more rigid. It is throat time. Bodine Electric was here. I didn't want to document that because reasons. And he said this was out of tolerance by 0.02, and the only way they can balance is anything over 1. So that would be 1.0, and we were at 0.02. We followed our manual to the letter, where they said you bolt one on here, you go to the next one, all the way to the other position. If this was the 12 o'clock, you'd go to the 6 o'clock position. And that ended up working just perfectly. And our cab is all insulated. We had to glue a gasket back into that. We stole that silver cap from the 550. I always liked the silver stuff a lot better. The seat, as we already talked about. Our carpet is installed, and we're insulated. Obviously the tires are on, and we siliconed what cracks we could, like right behind here. Following that all the way up, you can clearly see daylight right where the silicone is. Every little crack we love to fill up. We've got our cylinder speed RPM gauge reattached. They had to take that off for balancing. And now we have to get our chain put on that sprocket, ran over this block, under this idler out to the throat. And we had, this was more out of balance than the main cylinder. I don't quite know what the decimal was that he got it to, but he said this was very good back here. So I took his word for it and I paid him. He's a professional. And of course all of our belts are all installed and the combine's running tip-top shape. Of course, I already documented this. I'm going to put this all on, all the way to the front, new chains where we can. And then we're not going to run this chain again because we do not have a 63C corn head, which was driven from both sides. The 1163 was only driven from that side, so this is just a days gone by thing. One day I might take it off, and then I'll just have a backup laying around if that one ever were to go bad or lose a bearing. And these are all just going to be left on just because, no rhyme or reason. And one day we may switch out the 550 throat for this one because the 550 had a nice little triangular piece, and when you let your throat all the way down to check your hydraulic fluid oil, it gave you a nice level platform to work off of. They were just a little bit better. So that's where we stand. As soon as we get this throat on, we're going to put our 13-foot head on because we're not going after the 15-footer this year, just due to time, and I might find a 15 or 16-foot head with a U2 reel and the electronic header height control. This is where it pays to be organized, and I realize not everybody will have these little things laying around, these little bitty wire-on pieces of paper. They're actually waxy, so they're waterproof, but I knew right where this chain was, and I actually knew the difference between the chains because over on the throat there is two other sets of chains that are labeled as well, so I know which one is which. So there's no guesswork, and you get it strung all the way through that nightmare, and then you're off by 10 links. And then if I had this in a small snack size Ziploc bag, labeled, knew right where it was. October the 6th, our combine is done. We've done all the adjustments we can, tried to anticipate any problem we would have. It's balanced, hundreds of new parts put on. And so now we're going to switch our focus to the head. This is a 13-foot platform, and I'd like to have a 15-foot, but this is what we have today. And it's a rigid cutting bar. And what we're going to work on today is adjusting our vine knives, which is this adjustment right back here, this rear bar. You want that almost rubbing your auger, and that keeps you from wrapping, which we have a major problem with vetch. And we were going to adjust our throat choke plates, but we do not have, and I thought they would be all the same, we do not have the correct ones. These are ones we had up on the shelf for years, but they're actually for a different combine. You can see we're maxed out on our bottom slot, and we still have about an inch or so to get rid of, and the vine knives don't line up, so you don't want that. We're just going to go back to the 300 style that was on this, kind of an exercise in futility, but that's what you get with these old combines sometime. We think our table elevator chain will spread everything out before we get to our threshing cylinder anyway, so that's kind of the breaks of the game. And then this one will be able to be used on the diesel 300 if we need to, and just check our tensions on this, inspect our sickle sections, and then we're going to switch just purely for aesthetics. We're going to switch to this 13-foot reel. It's only like 4 or 5 bolts to do it, and with a forklift it just goes by in a breeze. This one has a little bit of rust on it, but it's just so much brighter and tighter than the other one. This has about 1.5 inches of play on the other one. Just these little 2-piece plastic bushings are all wore. Instead of switching it, why not just switch the entire reel? It'll be probably less time, in fact, than just switching the reels altogether. So that's what we're going to work on. We haven't used this head in quite some time. It's the old style, and what I mean by that is it doesn't have the variable speed head control, and it has the old style finger type header height control under all of those, and we've converted all of our combines away from that. The newer style is supposed to be much simpler, and we have a bearing going out on this head. It would still run a long time, it's just the seal popped off, but we don't have anything to run it, so we've gotten rid of all of our other 300s. We still have one in the shed, but I believe it's the modern style header control as well. Anybody that is going to be buying a head that was not fitted to the combine that they bought, it is important to note that if you are ever switching your head choke plates, which are these right here, that they have to be about right here. The choke plates that we were going to switch to would have ran our head right to here and right to here. If you have no choke plates in it and you are feeding right here, you will wrap your table elevator chain, and that is not fun. It took us about an entire afternoon one morning to figure that out, and then it dawned on Charlie after he had slugged it about 15 to 20 times. I don't remember if I documented this or not, but this head locker that came with this combine was bent in a perfect arch, and the reason for that is that this head locker did not fit this extra large cylinder. I don't know if the dealer put this on or it's they blew the smaller cylinder and just had this one laying around. No history on it, but this head locker would sit up about like this because the little ears in here were straight down. So I had to take a grinder, right there you can see how nice and snugly they fit, and hit that right there to get that to work properly. And I took it to Trilla after I tried to heat it up here. I couldn't get it hot enough to bend it back straight, so I took it to Trilla, stuck it in the press, and pressed it straight. And then also, it's the little things that help make your combine complete and might save your life. I'm adding this little pin. This is a lockout pin. I believe the Corn Diesel had that. And then I'm just going to put a cotter key in the far side, and you can see how tight that makes that fit. And I don't know, it probably doesn't need it. The old ones never had it, but you're gambling an awful lot when you're crawling under a head and you don't have your locker down to start with. And if it's got lockout holes, why not use them? I'm going to go throw some 15-minute fast dry bright red paint on this, Rust-Oleum. And once again, I tried to heat this, so that was all black and purple and had burnt paint on it, and threw it in the sandblasting cabinet, and 15 extra minutes starts to make your combine look a lot better. You're already running an old machine, so why not try to keep your eye appeal up as best as you can, and you're not running around in an old piece of junk. Once again, it might be a little silly to some people, but I always say it's the little things that make an old machine nice. I stole as many of these that made sense off of the 550. I have main drive. Oh, come on, focus. I have main drive, which goes here. I've got the table going up and down, which goes there. And then I have unloader, which goes behind the seat on this combine. Sorry if this is a little loud for the video quality, but we have to have the machine running to demonstrate this. When we put all of our new systems on, these were the original, from the factory, brackets.
what we had to do from surmising from the old book that we have, you start with the head in the down position, and then you have your control valve right there that Tim has his hand on, unscrewed. You have it all the way unscrewed until it's about to come out of the adjustment column. Then you hook up your header control line, and then the head will be all the way on the ground until you tighten your control knob up. And then you keep screwing it up until you get the desired height. And we always had to, on every one of these, we've had to cut them and move it up either an inch or 2 inches on this one. Our adjustment slots are all the way maxed out, and this did not have enough adjustment for us to make the adjustment. And all of these, the system, the header height control system, looked original. It wasn't broken and re-welded. So it was something a little odd, but I am confident now that we have it. And here we will demonstrate the head hopping once it's set. That's what it's supposed to do.